Every man has lived through that moment when she says something that doesn't just land wrong. It hits a part of you she had no business touching. You stand there frozen, wondering how a small disagreement somehow turned into a shot aimed straight at your value. Most men brush it off. They convince themselves she was overwhelmed, tired, or simply emotional. But that's the trap, because some lines aren't accidental slips, they're indicators, psychological signals wrapped in casual sentences. And once you understand them, your entire relationship suddenly looks different. If you've ever felt like you're being judged without knowing the rules, or like you're giving your best while she slowly chips away at your confidence, this is the moment it all clicks. These 6 phrases are not random. They're patterns. Patterns that reveal whether she respects you or whether she's quietly eroding the foundation beneath you. There's a layer of female communication most men never recognize because women rarely reveal what's happening under the surface. But inside certain sentences, there's a blueprint that exposes whether she truly values you or whether she's already downgraded you in her mind. These phrases aren't widely discussed because they shine a spotlight on a side of female psychology most people would rather deny. But today, you're going to hear the truth. No sugarcoating, no filters, just clarity. If you want more truths men were never taught like this video and subscribe to Hidden Waters, then make yourself a promise in the comments. I will not ignore red flags anymore. Because once you understand what these sentences really mean, moments from your past will suddenly make perfect sense. Let's go deeper. Let's begin. A real man would. There's a specific kind of stillness that settles in the room when she drops this line. It's not confusion. It's the quiet of being compared, judged, and silently deemed inadequate. You're trying to understand how a simple conflict suddenly turned into an attack on who you are. And the truth is, she knows exactly what she's doing. That phrase isn't communication, it's a tactic. A phrase designed to bypass logic and strike directly at your core identity. When she says, "A real man would pay for everything," or "A real man wouldn't question me," or "A real man would give me his passwords," she isn't expressing her standards. She's revealing the level of control she believes she should have over you. This isn't about principles or values. It's about compliance. It's meant to tap into that internal pressure men feel, that instinct to prove themselves. And once that hook is in, she knows she can shift the target anytime she wants. Today, a real man buys what she wants. Tomorrow, a real man accepts her decisions without challenge. Next week, a real man drops his boundaries to avoid upsetting her. The definition keeps changing because it was never real to begin with. It adapts to whatever benefits her in that moment. A woman using this line is running a test. She's not asking, "Are you masculine?" She's asking, "Can I use your masculinity against you?" If you fall into the trap and try to prove yourself, she learns how to steer you. And if you get defensive and start arguing, you lose again, because now she knows the phrase hits you where it hurts. A woman who respects you doesn't weaponize your gender to express a need. She communicates with clarity, not manipulation. She'll say, "I need more support," or "This situation doesn't work for me," without slicing into your identity. But the woman who says, "A real man would," is sending a message about how she views power and where she believes she stands in relation to you. The strongest answer isn't anger. It's calm, direct clarity. Look her in the eye and ask, "What exactly do you mean by real man here?" And watch the shift. Most cannot define it because the power of the phrase comes from how vague it is. The moment she has to explain it, the spell breaks. A woman who needs to tear you down to elevate herself isn't seeking partnership. She's looking for leverage. And believe me, if she starts with this sentence, she will not stop with just one. Now, the second phrase, "I'm PMSing." This one usually arrives right after the storm. The raised voice, the insults, the slammed cabinet, maybe even something thrown. And then, as if it wipes away everything that just happened, she says, "I'm PMSing." Suddenly, you're expected to swallow the disrespect because 3 letters are supposed to excuse everything. Let's be clear, PMS is real. The discomfort, the irritability, the the sensitivity, the physical pain, none of that is made up. But when a woman repeatedly uses PMS as a catch-all excuse for cruelty, she isn't asking for compassion. She's demanding immunity. She's saying, accept anything I say or do because I can blame it on hormones. There's a massive difference between asking for understanding and weaponizing biology to avoid accountability. A woman in genuine discomfort will communicate like an adult. She'll say, I'm tense today. Can we continue this later? Or, I'm on edge right now. I'm trying to manage it. That's maturity. It recognizes the emotion without using it as a shield. But the woman who yells, belittles, throws insults, crosses boundaries, and then shrugs it off with, sorry, I'm PMSing, isn't dealing with hormones. She's using them as protection from consequences. She's telling you the rules don't apply to her during certain days, and that you're expected to tolerate whatever she unleashes. And if you do, the pattern becomes permanent. She's counting on you to stay silent, because once she realizes you'll swallow it without pushback, she'll use the same excuse whenever it benefits her. Little by little, she starts depending on your willingness to absorb the blow. Your patience becomes her shield. Your silence becomes her comfort zone. And eventually, she teaches you, without ever saying it, that your job is to endure her emotional outbursts no matter how far they go. You start rationalizing things you shouldn't. You tell yourself maybe she's stressed, maybe you're overreacting, maybe this is just part of being in a relationship. And that's exactly how men drift into emotional numbness. Not because they're weak, but because they've been conditioned to believe they don't have the right to feel hurt. It doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens slowly, quietly, through excuses that stack up until you can't tell the difference between compassion and self-abandonment. But biology isn't an all-access pass to mistreatment. Hormones may amplify feelings, but they don't force someone to attack your dignity. That's a choice. And when a woman chooses to lash out and later hides behind PMS, she isn't just dodging responsibility. She's rewiring your expectations of what you're supposed to tolerate. She's teaching you that your boundaries are optional and her moods outrank your humanity. You don't need to analyze her. You don't need to fight with her. You only need to make a simple distinction. Emotions are understandable. Disrespect is not. You can look her in the eye and say, calmly and without heat, I know you're uncomfortable, but disrespect isn't something I'm going to overlook. And then you watch what she does next. Pay attention not to her excuses in the moment, but to her behavior once the storm passes. Does she self-correct, or does she repeat the same pattern every time she wants to win a conflict without accountability? A woman who respects you will adjust once she sees the line. A woman who doesn't will expect you to endure the next explosion and the one after that. Pain can explain intensity. It cannot justify cruelty. And that brings us to something far quieter, but equally destructive. I didn't ask you to. This phrase doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't insult directly. Instead, it wipes out everything you offered. It's emotional erasure. And for a man whose love is often expressed through action, through building, fixing, showing up, this hits with the force of rejection, dressed in indifference. You go out of your way to make her life easier because you want her to feel supported. You repair something she needs, run errands without being prompted, take care of the kids so she can breathe for a moment, or bring her flowers just to ease a hard week. You step in because caring is natural to you, and then she responds with a flat, icy, I didn't ask you to. That sentence carries an entire message beneath the surface. Your effort only matters if it serves her exactly how she imagined. Anything outside her script becomes pointless in her eyes. Your thoughtfulness becomes irrelevant, your initiative becomes unnecessary, and your desire to care becomes something she treats as an inconvenience rather than a gift. For some women, this response comes from a deep discomfort with vulnerability. Accepting help makes them feel exposed, so they reject it to feel in control. Others mistake consistent care for something they're automatically entitled to. They stop seeing what you do because they've normalized it. And then there are those who treat love as a simple transaction. If they didn't specifically request the gesture, they believe it holds no value. But what this phrase really does is far more corrosive than the dismissal itself. It slowly teaches you to pull back. Every time your effort is met with indifference, a part of you dims. You hesitate before you help. You hold back when you once stepped forward easily. Eventually, you stop offering altogether. And the moment you do, she rewrites the story. Suddenly, you're the one who's grown cold, detached, lazy, uninterested. She twists the absence of the very thing she once rejected into a weapon against you. A woman who truly values you will never make you feel foolish for being thoughtful. She won't punish your effort just because it wasn't requested like a chore list. She won't shrink your generosity to protect her ego. When you find yourself on the receiving end of that phrase, you don't need to argue or justify your intentions. You simply name the impact. When you say that, it makes what I do feel invisible. Then watch her reaction. Does she soften? Does she recognize the hurt and recalibrate? Or does she shrug, dismiss, or act annoyed that you even brought it up? A woman who dismisses your kindness will eventually drain every good part of you. A mature woman won't. And then there's the next line, one that reveals something deeper than frustration. When she looks at you and says, "Then why do I need you?" There's a different temperature in the air. This isn't confusion. This isn't anger. This is entitlement speaking through her mouth. You typically hear this when you don't meet a demand she assumed you'd fulfill. Maybe you couldn't afford something she wanted. Maybe you upheld a personal boundary she didn't like. Maybe she expected immediate compliance, and for once you didn't fold. Instead of having a conversation, she reaches straight for humiliation. Then why do I need you? That isn't curiosity, it's demotion. In that moment, she's not treating you like a partner. She's treating you like a tool whose value is based entirely on how convenient you are. Most men never say it out loud, but that sentence dehumanizes you. Underneath it is a brutal message. Your worth only exists in the services you provide. Women who say this operate from a transactional mindset. They don't see the relationship as an exchange of care or emotional intimacy. They see it as a contract of benefits, and if you fail to deliver one of those benefits, even temporarily, they question your entire existence in their life. And no man should ever let himself be spoken to like that. They move through relationships like accountants rather than partners, constantly tallying what they're receiving versus what they're missing. Their focus isn't on connection, it's on calculation. And the moment the scales tip even slightly against their expectations, they don't communicate disappointment like someone who cares. They strike. They turn a momentary frustration into a full assault on your worth with one loaded question. Why are you even here? That line does something deeply corrosive inside a man. It shifts you from feeling like a partner to feeling like an employee trying to justify your position. Suddenly, you're performing instead of connecting. You start pushing harder, giving more, silencing your needs, bending your boundaries, all in the hope that if you just go above and beyond, she'll never say those words again. You're not loving anymore. You're trying to earn the right to stay. But here's the tragedy men rarely admit out loud. Once a woman reduces you to a role she can replace, every extra ounce of effort only confirms her perspective. You can't secure lasting value from someone who only measures you by temporary usefulness. You can't build permanence with someone who treats care like a subscription service. A woman who actually loves you doesn't turn hardship into an audit. She doesn't evaluate you based on one imperfect moment. She looks at the whole of you, the support, the commitment, the character, and she moves with you through difficulty instead of standing above you with a clipboard. She says, "How do we fix this together?" Not "What good are you right now?" Right? And if you want to handle this line with strength, you don't argue your worth. You don't list the things you've done. You don't plead for recognition. That only drags you deeper into the frame she set, where she gets to define your value. Instead, you step out of it entirely. You answer with clarity. My value isn't determined by one moment. Then you turn the mirror back where it belongs. What makes you define my worth only by what I provide right now? That question forces the truth out of hiding. Because if her affection depends on what she gains in each moment, she isn't in a relationship. She's managing a resource. And no matter how much you give, someone who sees you as a resource will never see you as irreplaceable. Then there's the phrase that carries a different kind of weight altogether. It's quiet, it's heavy, and it hits the deepest part of a man's heart. I wasted my best years on you. This one doesn't attack your competence. It attacks your history. It attacks the meaning of everything you built together. It's not just an insult, it's a rewriting of time itself. It turns memories that once felt shared, mutual, meaningful into regrets she now claims she should have given to someone else. And it usually comes when her life isn't matching the picture she had in her head, and she needs a face to pin the disappointment on. Maybe she imagined a different lifestyle by now. Maybe she expected a ring, a house, a certain kind of status. Maybe she thought she'd be further ahead, and instead of facing her own choices, she reaches for the fastest way to transfer the blame, you, and she weaponizes time itself to do it. But here's the truth. Most men don't see clearly in the moment. That sentence isn't actually about the past. It's about the future she's frustrated with. She's not reviewing your years together with honesty, she's rewriting them because her present doesn't look the way she hoped. It's a psychological escape hatch called narrative distortion. When someone can't reconcile their current reality, they revise the past so their anger feels justified. The emotional danger is how quickly men internalize this. You begin replaying years, questioning whether you held her back, whether you should have tried harder, earned more, been more. You absorb guilt that never belonged to you because you forget something crucial. Every year was a choice she made willingly. No one trapped her. She stayed because she wanted to, not because she was forced. Calling those years wasted doesn't make them wasted. It only reveals her unresolved resentment. A woman who loves you won't turn your shared timeline into a weapon. She won't take the very years that shaped you both and hurl them back at you as proof of your failure. She'll talk about disappointment directly, without erasing the truth of what you both chose. If she ever uses that line, you do not defend your history. You don't argue the meaning of those years like a lawyer presenting evidence. You simply return the truth to her side of the table. If being with me feels like a waste, then continuing is an even bigger one. Calm, direct, free of shame. Because when someone is willing to trash their own past just to wound you, they are showing you exactly how they'll treat your future. And then there's the final phrase, the one spoken with a casual arrogance that reveals everything she thinks she knows about you. If you don't like it, go find someone else. This isn't said in fear, it's said in confidence. Confidence that you're too attached to walk away. Confidence that your loyalty is guaranteed. Confidence that she can treat you however she wants because you won't dare leave. It's entitlement wrapped in indifference. You usually hear it when you bring something painful to the table, something real, something vulnerable. Maybe you're pushing back on constant spending, or the disrespect, or the attitude shifts, or the lack of accountability. And instead of addressing the issue, she throws you a challenge she thinks you'll never take. Leave. The message underneath is simple. I don't think you have the courage to protect yourself. And that belief is exactly why the relationship is dying. Maybe you've been asking for something simple, more intimacy, more respect, more partnership, something that allows both of you to feel seen instead of sidelined. Maybe you've been pointing out patterns she's brushed aside for months, hoping that this time she'll actually listen. But instead of engaging, instead of meeting you where you are, she reaches for the line she knows hits the deepest. If you don't like it, go find someone else. It sounds like freedom, but it isn't. She's not giving you an exit. She's testing whether you're too afraid to take it. From her perspective, this sentence isn't emotional expression. It's strategy. It's a confident bluff built on the assumption that you won't call it. She knows you're thinking about the kids, the home, the finances, the years you've invested. She knows how heavy the fear of starting over feels, how conflict drains you, how the idea of losing your family keeps you still. She's counting on that weight to pin you exactly where she wants you. And every time you step back instead of standing firm, the imbalance widens. What once felt like a partnership subtly becomes a hierarchy, where her comfort sits above your dignity. Psychologically, that line lands in the softest part of a man's identity. It makes you feel disposable, like your effort is interchangeable and your presence is optional. It traps you in a loop where both choices feel wrong. If you stay, you feel weak for tolerating it. If you go, you feel guilty for breaking something you fought so hard to preserve. That's how learned helplessness forms, not through shouting or chaos, but through quiet, consistent dismissal. When every concern you raise gets flipped back on you, you stop believing your needs matter. You stop believing you're allowed to take up space. But here's the truth: a woman who values you doesn't challenge you to leave. She fears losing you. She respects the relationship enough to stay in uncomfortable conversations, even when the truth stings. She doesn't turn your commitment into leverage. She doesn't weaponize your loyalty. And she definitely doesn't treat your love as a resource she can draw from without ever replenishing it. So when you hear that line, you don't need to shout. You don't need to match her intensity or sink into the emotional quicksand she's hoping you drown in. The most powerful stance you can take is calm, steady clarity. I'm not looking for someone else. I'm looking for respect. And then you watch. Because the moment she realizes her threat no longer intimidates you, everything shifts. The dynamic changes the second she sees you're no longer held hostage by fear. However, if she keeps repeating that line, understand what she's really doing. She's not miscommunicating. She's defining the rules. She's telling you your dignity is negotiable if it threatens her comfort. She's telling you the price of staying is accepting a version of love where your boundaries are bendable, your feelings are optional, and your emotional safety is secondary. That sentence is not a warning. It is an invitation to leave. And a man who respects himself eventually recognizes when it's time to accept it. There's always a moment, late at night when the house is quiet and the truth finally has room to breathe, when a man admits what he's been avoiding. He realizes those harsh sentences weren't slip-ups. They weren't bad days or emotional overload. They were windows into how she truly saw him long before he allowed himself to see it. A real man would. I'm PMSing. I didn't ask you to. Then why do I need you? I wasted my best years on you. If you don't like it, go find someone else. These aren't small misunderstandings. They are patterns of contempt. They show you exactly how she frames your place in her life. Your effort is expected, your emotions are inconvenient, your boundaries are flexible, and your value is measured only by how much you endure. This mindset comes from entitlement, the certainty that you won't leave, that you're too loyal, too tired, or too afraid to choose yourself. But a woman who truly loves you doesn't punish you with rewritten history. She doesn't blame biology or stress or time to justify cruelty. She doesn't treat you like a utility or test how much disrespect you're willing to swallow. She guards your dignity because she understands that without respect, no relationship, no matter how long, can survive. You cannot repair something built on the belief that you are less than human. You cannot negotiate respect with someone who has already decided you don't deserve it. And you cannot heal in a space that repeatedly teaches you that your pain is irrelevant. Leaving doesn't make you weak. Staying somewhere that erodes you does. Walking away isn't quitting. It's choosing not to participate in your own destruction. So now I want to hear from you. Which sentence have you heard? Which one cut the deepest? Share your story, because your honesty might be the moment another man finally wakes up and stops tolerating what's been draining him for years. And if you want a space where a woman speaks the truth about how women think, without filters, without sugarcoating, and without manipulation, then subscribe to Hidden Waters. Share this with a man who needs to hear it. You never know whose life you might pull back from the edge. You don't need to be perfect to deserve respect. You just need to stop staying in places that treat you like you're convenient instead of human.